What's up, everyone? This is Raphael Garcia here, again with another edition of the MMA Ratings Podcast. First and foremost, let me say I'm a little bit under the weather, so if you hear me sneeze or anything like that, I apologize ahead of time, but not dealing too well with the season change from summer to fall, so looks like I got sick, and it sucks. But what did not suck was a night of UFC action last night. We got a lot to cover from UFC 178 last night to Bellator the day before. So jump right in. Roy is again with me today. We're working on coming up with together for everyone out there listening. So again, I appreciate you checking us out and hearing what I have to say today. But yeah, let's look at what is going on in the world. Last night, the UFC gave us what was their event of the year, maybe even of the last 2 or 3 years with UFC 178. It was a great card. I enjoyed it top to bottom. That's basically the we're hearing across the board delivered, and almost everyone had a lot to take from what we saw. A lot of good moments and a lot of controversial moments and some questionable calls, but nothing really to detract from the card from top to bottom. I definitely enjoyed myself from start to finish as I watched the event. So we're going to basically jump right in and talk about some of the things that we saw last night at UFC 178. So first things first, of course, we got to start with the main event in which Demetrius Johnson defended his title Chris Carriazo last night, and he was coming in with trying to climb up a pretty major hill because he was stuck in a position where a lot of people didn't appreciate the fact that he was fighting on his card. I know it was originally supposed to be John Jones versus Daniel Cormier, which would have been a massive event, but Demetrius Johnson is probably the most dominant champion in the division or in the sport right now, next to maybe like a Ronda Rousey or someone along those lines who hasn't really been challenged at their position. He's had some tough battles. He had a tough fight with John Dodson, and his first fight with Ian McCall was definitely a scrap, and one with Joseph Benavidez as well. But he's continued to look so much more improved every time he's out that it's almost like a foregone conclusion that no one can really stop him at this point. He defended his belt last night against Carrasco, and he was able to walk out of there with another victory last night. He finished out in the second round with a transition into the from there and forced Chris to tap out. But even for the round and a half that we got to see the fight, it was clear that Mighty Mouse was the better fighter from start to finish. Kerry also came in there and tried to basically be aggressive on his feet, and he couldn't hit Mighty Johnson anyway. Johnson was moving in and out with the quickness that he's become known for. So it's nothing too shocking to see with this fight there. It basically asks the question, what else is left for Demetrius in the weight class? And he still has a pretty good fight with John Lineker, I believe, should be next coming up maybe in Brazil or something along those lines. And that would be a pretty good fight there. Zach Bukowski just recently lost, so he kind of gets bumped off of the list. And him and Cejudo actually getting bumped up the bantamweight. There really aren't any too many thoughts beyond that. But Johnson's doing what he's supposed to do. He's cleaning out his weight class, he's defeating everybody, he's getting finishes more often. I want to say this is his third finish in a row. Oh no, excuse me, no, Scott. He finished 3 out of 4 because he didn't finish Ali Bagatinov. But he still looks good. I think he deserves more attention as a champion. It'll be interesting to see what the pay-per-view numbers are coming out of this event because UFC 174, which he also headlined, rumored to only have gotten like 95,000 pay-per-view buys. The most I've seen for it was 115 total. So if this one can, I expect this card to do more than that, but it will still be interesting to see if his strength as a champion has grown any. The UFC did more promotion of him when talking about this upcoming fight, so hopefully that'll help. But Mighty Mouse is definitely someone that I see holding the flyweight champion. Maybe if you look at all of the champions across the division now, across all divisions now, he may mess around being end up being the longest reigning champion. I think only Ronda has the potential of taking that spot, but I see her losing before I see Mighty Mouse losing just because of the fact that he's beaten a lot of the top contenders already put in front of him, and he just seems to keep getting better every time out. He hasn't made any mistakes of underestimating any opponents or anything like that. So it's interesting to see. I hope he faces John Lineker next, somebody else that has that stopping power. There are some questions about John's cardio and how well he'll do in a 5 round fight. But he looked very good in his last contest. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this fight and who is next for the UFC's flyweight champion, Demetrius Johnson. Again, man, please bear with me with this cold. I can barely talk. Yeah, I sound like I got both my hands stuck up my nose. So sorry about that now, but I definitely appreciate you hanging out with me. Talk about the sport. So let's move on to the co-main event where we saw Eddie Alvarez make his UFC debut against Donald Cerrone. And I coming into this week, I was talking to everybody about this fight, and everyone wanted to kind of lean towards Eddie Alvarez, which was, a very believable pick. But I kind of stuck with Donald Cerrone because I knew that he, for some reason, I felt like he wasn't going to wilt with this moment on the stage. I know in some other instances where he's faced top five talent, he just hasn't been able to put it all together. He was recently dominated by Rafael Dos Anjos. Anthony Pettis stopped him, but whenever he's on cue, he looks very good as a lightweight. And he did last night against Eddie Alvarez, even though Eddie was able to take the first round. He had Donald hurt. He was landing some big shots, especially with the sequence of dirty boxing attacks midway through the first. So it looked like Eddie was going to be able to pull out a decision win because it was a good strong first round for the former Bellator champion. But then Cerrone just stuck with those leg kicks, and that really kind of hampered Eddie's ability to land any effective shots. You started seeing it where he was changing stances, but he wasn't even comfortable in that stance. So he would change back and put the injured leg out front, and Cerrone would chop him again with another leg kick. Those and the knees that he was catching Eddie with every time he came in had to take their toll on the UFC debut of Alvarez because he just looked like he couldn't really get off any any offense at any point in time from the second round on. He's known for landing like very crisp boxing combinations, and at no point at all after the first round was he able to do so. So Cerrone came in there, he did exactly what he needed to do. This is his fifth straight win this year. The first time he hasn't gotten a stoppage as well. He said he wanted to fight 6 times this year. He still has some time to maybe sneak in on a December card. We'll see if that happens. But he definitely went out there last night and did what he needed to do to get the win. I'm not going to say I'm impressed with what he did because I expected that. I expected him to be too much of a tough challenge for Alvarez coming into his UFC debut. Eventually, see what's next for him. There's fights out there with maybe like a Miles Jury or even a Jorge Masvidal, which we'll talk about later. But I think that he obviously he can't get a fight with Anthony Pettis if Anthony is to beat Gilbert Melendez next month, or excuse me, in January. He can't get that fight out the gate because he's recently been defeated by Pettis. Uh, and you have to wonder how well he does definitely against the top 5 in the weight class. Like I said, he's already lost to Rafael dos Anjos. He was supposed to fight Nurmagomedov tonight, or at UFC 178 actually, but Nurmagomedov was injured. He still has that knee injury that has him out until early next year. So maybe that'll be a potential fight for Habib if he comes back in time. I know T.J. Grant was supposed to be fighting at some point in time this year as well too. So maybe that's another fight there too. But that's also puts him in the same position, puts Grant in the same position as Alvarez. He hasn't fought in almost 2 years. So coming back into the UFC and trying to take that position will be a very tough test if he had to face Cerrone as well. So the Cowboy did what he needed to do. He's definitely going to be placed within the top 10, if not even higher than that. So hats off to him. No pun intended, but he definitely did what he needed to do last night in getting the victory over Eddie Alvarez in the co-main event. Sorry about that. So I'm going to talk about what's next for Eddie Alvarez. Coming off of that loss, he is still a valuable lightweight in that uh, weight class. I know a lot of individuals were questioning how well he's going to do overall. And if he gets 5 fights in the UFC, he very well goes like 3-2 or 2-3, just depending on how well he's booked, because that's such a deep weight class. And just looking at that group, maybe he could be placed against a Rustam Pablo, who just recently lost to Vincent Henderson. That could be a good fight there. Or let me see who else is. I'm not sure who else is really coming off of a loss as a top tier lightweight. So that's kind of tough. We just pick someone out of a hat. But that's just the first name of someone that came to mind. He's going to go out there and provide an exciting fight for the fans. Alvarez never really disappoints in that way. It's just how his fighting style works. So there's still going to be some value that the UFC can take in having him on their roster at 155. The next fight we're going to talk about is the Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier fight, which occurred at 145, and this was a spectacle. There's probably more things to talk about outside of the actual fight itself when it involves Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. Of course, we all saw that McGregor got the finish in under, I want to say it's under 2 minutes. Yes, so a minute 46 seconds in the first round. He looked like he was throwing a left hook that clipped Dustin kind of behind the ear, kind of in the back of the head. You're not really sure. But Dustin goes down. He takes like 3 or 4 more punches before the ref stops it. But man, McGregor did everything that he said he was going to do. And even before the blow that dropped Poirier, he was in complete control of the bout. His kicks were looking like they were frustrating Poirier because he couldn't necessarily move in and out like he wanted to, and then he had the range advantage anytime Dustin came in. He was taking punches, straight, clean punches too as well. So he really had the diamond rattled from the start of the fight. So man, I immediately sat there and watched. Was like, is this guy really as good as he is saying he is? And he is making everyone a believer at this point in time, just because of the way he's going out there and performing. I think Dustin Poirier was ranked number 5 in the weight class, and Conor was number 10, I believe 10 or 9. So this immediately has to ball him up to the top group. of the weight class. So you got to wonder what's next for Conor. Do you give him the fight against the winner of Jose Aldo and Chad Mendez? Personally, I believe so because unfortunately, this is kind of like a money fight instead of a I guess sports direction type of fight because obviously he hasn't beaten someone that's he hasn't beaten a Frank Yeager Cup Swanson or a even like a Ricardo Lamas or anyone like that. He hasn't beaten one of those guys yet. So it's tough to say he really deserves the next title shot. But if you're looking at this from a business standpoint, which is what the UFC is and always will be, I believe you make that fight and you make it as soon as we get the winner from UFC 179. Aldo and Mendez is a big fight at 145, and the guy who comes out there will definitely have the title. I don't see why you don't place him against Conor McGregor. At this point in time, again, this is not about a rankings fight. This is not about a sticking to the uh, sticking to the tried and true formula within combat sports of always giving a guy tough fights before getting a title shot. This is something along the lines of like what a Nick Diaz did against George St. Pierre, where they made that fight because they knew that that was a money fight, and that's exactly what it was. In the end, everybody made an ample amount of money off of that contest. The same thing is going to occur here. It's clear that Conor has a very wide reach, a ever-growing fan base, and he has the personality to carry that torch. But he also has the abilities to do it as well because he looked good. He looked really good last night. He looked big at 145. He looked like he knew how to use that range and how he landed. He looked like he knew how to land almost at will and put away his opponent. So that's something worth watching there. I definitely think he gets the title shot, whether we want to agree with that or not. Whether hardcore fans are upset, that's all well and good, but I guarantee you they'll watch the fight just as much as mainstream Conor McGregor fans will um, if that fight is made. So I was impressed by what he did last night. I wasn't expecting to go that way. I actually I think I picked um, Justin just because I thought he had more ways to win that fight. So I'm impressed with what I saw. And I'm not gonna say I'm a fan now, but I'm definitely going to pay attention to what Conor McGregor is doing from this point in time because he's definitely earning a lot of the attention that he's getting in mixed martial arts right now. Next, that'll bring me to the Yoel Romero and Tim Kennedy fight. And this fight kind of went exactly how I thought it was going to go, except for the caveat that I thought I picked Tim Kennedy to get the win. And, there's going to be some controversy surrounding this fight. We'll get to that in a minute. But the first round went exactly kind of how I thought it was going to go with Romero being able to kind of control the pacing because he uses that slow but explosive type approach where he lands power shots and he's able to move in and out while scoring takedowns or avoiding being taken down on his own. He was able to do that for the first 5 minutes. But once he started tiring and Kennedy recognized that, he was able to pressure his opponent, which is what we saw in round two, especially at the end of round two when Kennedy was catching him with those uppercuts from the clinch and almost stopped the man. He had Romero on the ropes. If he has 20 more seconds, he gets to finish there. I believe 20, 30 more seconds, he definitely gets to finish because Romero was out. The cage was keeping him on his feet, and Kennedy just ran out of time because John McCarthy had to step in and stop it there, which is what leads to the controversy in Romero getting the extra time on the stool. And it's hard to say who really is at fault here because Romero didn't try to stand up. He just sat on the stool and stayed there. Uh, the commission staff on hand at the time just kind of seemed to let him stand there, and it didn't really push the issue of getting him up, getting him ready to fight. So it's hard to see if you can blame this on his corner or if you can blame it on the actual INSAC licensed staff that was in the cage at the time because it was a UFC cut man that was in there still that wasn't necessarily moving fast enough to get out of the way and get Romero up. Then you have James McCarthy, or excuse me, John McCarthy, who was the referee of the bout. He didn't necessarily like he was over there talking to Kennedy, who was trying to get him up instead of forcing Yoel up, which was a bad. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it was a bad decision because obviously he has to make the decision at the snap of a moment. There, it's kind of hard to play Monday morning quarterback and say what he should have done. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this moment here. If anyone will be sanctioned, fined, or if there's any kind of suspension or anything like that. I don't think so. Maybe someone will get a fine or something for not allowing him to, or for not forcing Romero up in a quick enough manner. There's some people that are trying to call it, say this fight should be made a no contest, but that really wasn't that. I don't ever see that really ever happening because honestly, let's say if Yoel doesn't get up fast enough and all that still happens the same way, but Tim Kennedy finishes in the third round. Personally, I don't think anyone is going to be upset. No one's going to be calling for sanctions. No one's going to be mad at what happened. They're just going to think that the course of action they wanted to see occurred. But Romero did get a couple extra seconds of rest, and he was able to capitalize on Kennedy because he dropped him almost immediately after finished less than a minute after the round had started. So there are going to be those questions there. What exactly he got from that extra amount of time, extra amount of rest there? But I feel like it's just because people are upset that Tim Kennedy lost that they're upset that he got the extra amount of time because had Kennedy won the fight and turned around and knocked Romero out immediately afterwards, I don't think a lot of people would still be so upset. So it's definitely a captivating moment in the sport to kind of see how the Nevada State Athletic Commission is going to respond and see what everyone's responses will be to the situation. Hopefully, we don't ever see it again. It was dubious on their part. They definitely didn't. His corner didn't do enough to get him up because they knew he was hurt. He was out on his feet at the end of the second round. If you look, I don't know if anyone else caught it, but he had to use the cage to kind of hold himself up when he does walk back over to his corner. So he was clearly out. A couple more punches would have put him off the count, and he, escaped luckily there. Kennedy was trying to finish him. Kennedy was looking good coming into that third round, and unfortunately, the circumstances occurred the way they did, and Kennedy got caught coming in and got finished less than a moment, or excuse me, less than a minute into the round. So it's an interesting situation. I'm looking forward to seeing what Kennedy has to say about it because we all know that he does not pull his punches when it comes to stating his stance on things. So it'll be an interesting situation to see what happens going forward from here. That brings us to Kat Zingano and Amanda Nunes, who was the opening fight on the main card of UFC 178. And these two women definitely brought the show. They kicked off the fight in a fantastic way. Um, I'm not surprised at Kat Zingano got the win. I actually picked Amanda Nunes because I expected her to finish early, which is what almost occurred. She had Kat very hurt in the first round and was dropping bombs on her from the guard and just basically giving her a lot of ground and pound. There were a lot of moments where it looked like Kat was in a very bad way. She looked very hurt and like she was just basically trying to hold on to survive that round, which she was able to do. There were some moments where she was still attacking off of her back. She had some good what looked like armbar attempts there. She had a good two or three of them in the first round, and but Nunez was still landing vicious elbows and punches. Looked like almost everything she was landing or throwing towards her face was landing. So she definitely took that round. And then Kat was able to come back and take the next two, or she took the third and then or she took the second and then finished Nunez with some vicious elbows in the third. So she did what she needed to do. She's probably going to be placed against Ronda Rousey next. I saw a headline earlier today that she's expected to face Rousey at UFC 182 in January. So I'm not too upset with that at all. I think it's the right move to make. She looked good in this fight. It's good to see her come back from the injury that she had, and also her husband committing suicide to be able to remain as like a high level mixed martial artist. I still don't think she beats Ronda Rousey. I think Rousey has more ways to win that fight, but She earned it last year, and it's good to finally see her get the opportunity to step in the cage and fight for the title. It's an opportunity that a lot of people may not get, and she's gonna hopefully make the best of it. Again, I don't think she's gonna get the win there, but I think it's definitely a positive step for her, especially seeing everything that she's been through in the last year or so. That'll bring me to the return of another fighter who has been gone for, I think, almost 3 years. Dominic Cruz looked fantastic in the preliminary main card fight, or excuse me, the main preliminary fight against Takeda Mizugaki, in which he finished the Japanese fighter in the first round. I want to say a minute and 1 second into the first round, and that was and it's funny because people were saying that Cruz kind of blacked out. He was saying he kind of blacked out. He just let go all of the aggression that's been building up over 3 years, and he just blew Takea out the water. I mean, Mizugaki couldn't get off at all. When he took that, I think it was a cross that led into the double leg that Cruz used to take him down and press him up against the cage. I mean, he just never looked like he had a chance against the former champion, and he just got smothered and bashed. He was it looked like he got knocked out 3 times before the ref was able to step in there and stop it. So I'm not surprised with what I saw. I said that this was going to be a tough fight for anyone to pick betting wise, just because Cruz have been out for so long and it's hard to see a lot of guys coming back and immediately returning to form. But Cruz looks almost better than he did before he went away with the two knee injuries and then the injured groin. So see him come back into the octagon that way was definitely worth watching. It was definitely an exciting moment. Uh, I I don't know if you immediately make the fight with TJ Dillashaw. That's for Dominic Cruz. You still have Rafael Sunside there, who's beaten TJ recently. He's fighting Brian Caraway coming up, so you still have that fight there. Then you have, of course, the rematch with Hidden Brown, but I doubt UFC is going to give him that immediate rematch. They've already kind of taken that stance. So you wonder if they make a fight between Cruz and Brown to see which guy gets the title shot next. But man, like I'm excited to see Dominic Cruz fight next time. I think I always thought he was one of the pound for pound best when he held the bantamweight title. I kind of felt like he was a lot like Demetrius Johnson now, where he wasn't getting a lot of attention outside of his feud with Uriah Faber. So it's good to see him get this win and to look so dominant in it. I think this is a good turning point for him to see him get from behind the Fox Sports Group and be able to get some more attention there. So it should be a great great couple of months for Cruz and see what's next for him. Hopefully he gets one more fight in this year, but we'll see going forward from there. Most the rest of the fight, oh excuse me, UFC 178 up to this point wasn't as exciting, but also had some good plays that I'm going to kind of jump through right now. Jorge Masvidal got another win. He defeated James Krause. So Masvidal is one of those guys that's going to linger around the top 10 of the weight class, and it'll be interesting to see what they do next with him. Then maybe putting him against Donald Cerrone would be a good move there, but it'll be interesting to see just how far Masvidal gets in the weight class because he definitely has his limitations, but he knows he's a very good fighter. I think he doesn't get a lot of the praise that he should, but he's a very good fighter. It's just a question of wondering how far he's going to be able to go at 165. Stephen Thompson was able to defeat Patrick Cote. He used his striking very good to keep the first Canadian outside, and he just kind of dominated with his striking there. He looked good. He looked like the striker that everyone had kind of hyped him up to be. He's had a couple of struggles in the UFC so far, but he looked really good last night. Brian Ebersol took a split decision over John Howard. Kevin Lee took a decision over John Tuck, and Manny Gambieri was able to tap Cody Gibson in the opening contest. of the night. So all in all, it's a very good event in my opinion. UFC 178 definitely uh, delivered. It has some contentious moments from jump out of your seat type of moments. So I definitely enjoyed the card from top to bottom. And I think that this is the type of event that hopefully UFC will continue to build on because they this is a stacked card, but even still, this didn't really feature all of their stars. There's still a lot of people that weren't on this card that could have been used in other ways. They make this card just as exciting. So I'm happy to see that this happened, and hopefully UFC can continue giving us cards like this throughout the year. So we're going to move on. We're going to move on to some other MMA action that was held throughout the weekend, and we're going to look at Bellator 26. Let's talk about a few main points that came out of that card on Friday evening. First and foremost, Brandon Hazley was able to submit Alexander Shlemenko in 35 seconds. So here is Bellator's last like big champion, last guy that kind of heralded up as one of their title holders, and this guy's taken two submission losses back to back, and almost like a white belt. I mean, the way Higgsy was able to get in there, take him down, take his back, and choke him on couch in less than a minute was almost amazing to watch. I don't. It's amazing that Shaleko's been so good for so long, but it's unfortunate that this is who Bellator's kind of been praising and holding up because again, this is his second submission loss in almost a beginner type fashion. So unfortunately for them, he took that loss. He took it in a bad way against Hazley, and I'm not sure if they're going to make the rematch or what they're going to do going forward. But if this was their biggest star, they're definitely in a bad spot because he did not look like much of a mixed martial artist on Friday. The way he was able to get dominated in such a fashion. Then Marcin Held definitely was good over Pucci Friere. That's definitely a good talking point at the 155 pound weight class. Hill was able to win that fight there, and then he'll take on the winner of Will Brooks and Michael Chandler probably sometime next year. So that is a good contest from there. Held is a pretty good lightweight. He's definitely someone worth watching within the Bellator organization. I think he can beat either Chandler or Brooks, honestly, to be honest. So I'm interested in seeing his next fight, and I'm interested in seeing who he's going to end up facing. But I definitely enjoyed watching him compete. I've always enjoyed watching him compete. So that was definitely a bright spot to take from the event. And Bubba Jenkins as well. I wanted to keep an eye out to see what he's done. He's slowly coming along as a mixed martial artist. He has that strong wrestling background. He has that background. He still kind of leads on, but he's definitely looking good on his feet as well. He's looking better. He's looking more aggressive and less tentative with his strikes, and his ground and pound is coming along well too. So that's something worth watching, and I think his next contest will be pretty interesting. But I know they're going to try to slide him into a eventual contender position. Only other thing I really took from the Bellator event was Larue, excuse me, I can't talk. Larue Burley, who is still undefeated 5-0 within the organization. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does going forward. He was able to get the second round submission over Raymond Pena, so that was a good fight there. So we'll see what's next for him as well. But overall, I didn't catch too much of the show. I kind of flipped back and forth and catch what I could. Friday night is actually my first night of relaxation in a very long time because I started getting sick then. So I watched all I could, but I made sure to catch those couple of bouts there and catch as much of the whole event. So again, this is the Scott Coker time in Bellator, so he's working with what he has right now. So we'll see what the promotion can put together for their upcoming events going forward. So we're going to move forward and talk about some of the news that came out in mixed martial arts this past week. I guess we're going to start with the INSAC hearing that occurred last week, in which Wanderlei Silva got banned for life because he ducked the drug test before his planned fight with Cho Sonnen. And I guess the Nevada State Athletic Commission wanted to come down hard on him for that. So they slapped him with a lifetime ban. But the Brazilian recently retired, so it's kind of like, well, is it too little, too late? Does he ever plan on coming back? What will happen then? But Dana White's come out and said he thinks that the suspension was too harsh, which I can kind of agree with. Like I guess they're trying to make a stand, and they're trying to say, okay, you just can't retire to kind of duck our our governing power. So they hit him with that lifetime ban. I don't think, I guess he doesn't. I guess he won't come back. So I'm not too pressed to see Wanderlei Silva fight again. But it's interesting to see them trying to make take a hard stand when it came to MMA and PEDs in the sport. Then John Jones and Dan Cormier were also punished for their media event scuffle. I want to say, I don't remember the amount in which they were fined, but they were both fined specific amounts, and they also have to do certain amounts of community service. I know John Jones has 40 hours that he has to do within that Las Vegas area before the upcoming fight. So it'll be the only thing I'm worried about is that it'll be a distraction before his fight. He says it wasn't, it won't be, but this is a tough test for him. So hopefully he'll be fully prepared. And the only other news bit to take out of that commission hearing was that Floyd Mayweather was not punished for the sparring session controversy that was held during the All Access before the Maidana rematch, that in the so-called weed smoking session. So it wasn't really anything to take from that as well, but the from that commission hearing as a whole. I don't know about everybody else, but when the Metaverse 5 lineup was announced last week, I got excited. Main event is Kenzo Gracie versus Kazushi Sakuraba, which is obviously a rematch of their prime fight years ago. Sakuraba was known as the Gracie Hunter for such a long time, so this is gonna have it'll have a lot of value to like the hardcore MMA fans that have been around for a while. I don't think a lot of the mainstream fans will be interested in seeing it because obviously Sakuraba and Gracie haven't been big names within that sport for a very long time. But I still think it's something worth watching. I look forward to ordering it. I look forward to seeing it. Vinny Margalés and Kevin Casey, who's been suspended for a year. They're competing on the card. They have a secret match lined up. Gary Tootin is coming back to face Max Maxwell. Raphael Lovato Jr. is on the card, and I can't remember the other fight right now. It's escaping my memory, but there it should be a good night. I'm looking forward to seeing the secret match. I'm calling Kenny Florian to be in that fight already. I'm going to call it now, so write it down on September 28th. I expect him to be a part of that secret matchup. Metaverse 5 will be available on online pay-per-view on November 22nd. So take advantage of some of the pre-orders. I think the price comes up to like $30 at the most, so you can maybe pre-order it for half of that. Metaverse does specials like that, but definitely keep an eye out for it. So I'm looking forward to that card, and I think Metaverse is doing some great things with this combat, or excuse me, sport jiu-jitsu. This week we also saw some important fight announcements. I think the biggest fight announcement this past week was the Frankie Edgar and Cub Swanson. They're headlining a UFC fight night in Austin, Texas. Edson Barbosa is on the co-main event. I can't remember who he's facing right at this time, but I think that is a important fight there, obviously, because you can have guys get a title shot at 145 coming out of that fight, and immediate value across. That's probably the biggest fight now this past week. What else along with that? Excuse me, Ezra Barbosa is fighting Bobby Green, so that's an important lightweight fight as well too. Bobby Green's been on a pretty good run, so if he can get another win there, I think that'll be like his eighth or ninth fight in a row, winning since all the way back to Strikeforce Challenger. So I think that's an important fight for him too, as well. Jessica I and Leslie Smith have been booked to face each other at UFC 180. Leslie Smith is a tough women's competitor who doesn't get a lot of attention now. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and pick her to win this fight to begin with. Jessica I coming off of that controversy where her fight was overturned and some of the truth wasn't necessarily brought out about the whole situation. So I think that's a good contest there. Abel Trujillo is fighting Tony Ferguson, and that's at UFC 181. And another big fight was announced this past week. Raphael and Nate Diaz fighting at UFC on Fox 13. Diaz hasn't fought since defeating Gray Maynard, and he kind of has been trying to bait the UFC into giving him more money, but they didn't succumb to that, and he's back in action at some point later on this year. That should be a pretty good fight there. I think Dos Anjos is someone who can weather the storm on the feet with the aggressive style, but he can also hang with Nate on the floor too as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick Rafael early in that fight. He's gonna be my early pick. I think he has the wrestling to kind of smother Diaz on the ground, but he also has the jiu-jitsu to keep himself out of dangerous spots. But those are probably like the big five fight announcements that were made this past week. Actually, Dominic Cruz has been given the next fight against TJ Dillashaw as well. I just saw that headline come across as well from last night. So once that fight is officially signed, that'll be a big announcement there too. And we have two more events coming up this weekend. We have let's see, this coming weekend we have UFC Fight Night Nelson versus Story and Bellator 127. I'm going to Bellator first because Daniel Stroff and Justin Wilcox sit at the top of this fight as the main event. And I'm looking to see what Stroff can do. I'm still mad at this guy for the way he lost to Pat Curran earlier this year. It'll be interesting to see if he can bounce back from that. I expect him to get the win. I was never high on Wilcox to begin with. I just don't think that guy really has ever had it put together. He got to a pretty good start when he was in the Strikeforce lightweight division, but he's kind of struggled since then. I don't think he'll be able to have enough answers for Strauss's kind of smothering and I don't want to say stalling, but definitely his tough game. But I want Strauss to kind of come out and impress me this fight because I think he needs to do something to be considered a featherweight contender again. Carl Parisi is back in the main co-main event against Fernando Gonzalez. Rafael Silva is competing Kendo Grove against Christian Mpumu. Sokuju will be on the card as well too. Let's see if there's anyone else. No one else really kind of stands out and catch my attention for this Bellator card. But again, they're kind of moving more towards the matchmaking with the biggest names they have. So this should be a pretty interesting offering. Again, it's free MMA on TV, so I've never snubbed my nose at that. So that's going down this Friday. And then Saturday on Fight Pass live in Sweden, Gunnar Nelson will be facing Rick Story. This is a pretty good it's a good tough test for Nelson to see where he really is as a welterweight. And then it's a good opportunity for Rick Story to kind of get back on his winning ways. Story was he was a big name at welterweight because he was expected to challenge, eventually challenge for the title. He actually has a win over Johnny Hendricks, but he just never has was ever able to turn it around. He took that loss to Charlie Brenneman, took that loss to Damian Maya, and then Kevin Gastelum. Kevin Gastelum also has a win over 2 recently. So, but he's put together 2 wins in a row, and I think he'll be the underdog coming in against Nelson. So if he can get an upset victory, if he can play that part well, then I think it should be a good night for him. I think Nelson would have enough tools to be able to get the win. But that's an interesting fight that I kind of called out after Nelson and Story's last win earlier this year. Akira Corsani is facing Max Holloway. I always enjoy watching Max Holloway compete. He's gotten a lot better in the octagon as of late. So it'll be interesting to see what he does next. Of course, I is coming off of that loss to Justin Poirier, in which he almost had the fight won, but he had his nose broken again. He's had those nose injuries since he took that illegal knee from was it Maximo Blanco, I believe, who gave it to him. So that's a co-main event as well. Looking down the rest of this card, Dennis Cyber is competing. He's making his return to the UFC, and Cathal Pendred is also on the card as well. He is one of Conor McGregor's training partners, as is Bruno Nelson. Either like TV on the card as well. He's won two straight fights since being defeated by Gegard Mousasi last minute. It was that back in 2012, I believe that occurred. So or wait, maybe 2013, I believe. So like that, all these fights, they're kind of this is a fight back card over in Sweden. So it's an opportunity for them to showcase some of their European competitors again. So I hope that mainstream MMA fans don't complain about this card because again, as Dana White once said, this card is not for us. This is for the European fight fans, kind of see some of their stars. So I'm not upset with it. I plan on catching at least the main event or going back and watching that fight. So that's what the UFC has to offer us coming forward this week of October 4th. So again, I think this was a good weekend of MMA action. There's a lot to take from it, a lot to kind of get us through this week when it comes to talking points. I'm going to look at just some other news bits. The bonuses from last night. Conor McGregor and Dominic Cruz took home performance bonuses, and Yoel Romero and Tim Kennedy also took $50,000 each. So we had that. Some other news that came out from last night, as I also mentioned, Kat Zingano is likely to face Ronda Rousey at UFC 182 on January 3rd. That's being reported by Sherdog. And also Dominic Cruz is to receive the featherweight title shot against TJ. That's also being reported by Sherdog. So that's probably the biggest news coming out of UFC 178. This week on MMA Ratings, I and Adam Martin will be doing our matchmaking pieces on what to do with the winners and losers from UFC 178. So keep an eye out for that. I will probably be working on some other pieces as well coming out of UFC 178. I'm not going to really probably not going to do a lot covering UFC Nelson versus Story this weekend. I'll leave that up to Roy. That's kind of like his area over there. I'm sure he'll have something to talk about when it comes to that card. So you can always be sure to catch us on MMA Ratings Net to catch all of our latest stories and pieces there. You can follow us on Twitter at MMA Ratings. You can follow me at R_Garcia_sports. And you can also follow Roy Billington at Roy_Billington. You can follow Adam Martin, Michael Ford, Nathan McCarter. We're all out there doing our due diligence to bring another insight into the world of MMA. So again, this is Raphael Garcia. Thank you for supporting us for another week. Thank you for putting up with me sounding like I have a vacuum stuck up my nose. And I'm going to go self-medicate and go back to sleep for the rest of the day. So everyone have a great Sunday. Enjoy the high of a great UFC card. And again, have a great day, everybody. See you next week.